Love you too, man. I gotta get a quick selfie with you guys. I don't know if this is gonna work because the lights are so bright, but this is an awesome room here. That ate up some of my time. Come on, wait for the clock. I am the CEO of the Babylon Bee. You may have heard of it. We are the world's most trusted, factually accurate news source. Our tagline is fake news you can trust. And we are publishing our satire in a very strange time. A very strange time. A wise man named G.K. Chesterton, I don't know if you've heard of him, he said back in 1911 that the world has become too absurd to be satirized. 1911, he said that. I'm going to show you quick examples. I'm going to run through these real quick. I'm going to show you some examples of how I believe the world has become too absurd to be satirized, and it's part of what's making our job a little bit difficult. If you could hit the first slide here, I'm just going to run through these really quick to jog your memory and show you a little bit about what we're dealing with here. Fiery but mostly peaceful protests after police shooting. You remember that? That was real. CNN put that on the screen. Go to the next one. Transgender weightlifter Laurel Hubbard named Sportswoman of the Year. Real headline. Go to the next one. Washington University creates segregated housing specifically for black students. We're fighting racism with segregation. Next. Review analysis, Stanford students are more likely to wear masks on bicycles than helmets. That is some skewed risk assessment. The smart kids go to Stanford, right? I thought. Can men get pregnant? Okay, this is on healthline.com. This is real. This is not a Babylon Bee headline. This is real. Is it possible? Yes. It's possible for men to become pregnant and give birth to children of their own. In fact, it's probably a lot more common than you might think. In order to explain, we'll need to break down some common misconceptions about how we understand the term man. The people who are going to tell you that men can get pregnant are going to break down misconceptions for you. So there's a couple of problems we run into when reality is too absurd to satirize, and one of them is that it means when you do jokes, when you create jokes, when you make up memes or you write satire, you have to exaggerate the truth to make a point to do that. That's kind of like how satire works, right? We're not just telling the truth. That's Not the Bee, by the way. Go to Not the Bee. That's a fun site too. But when you're making the joke, you're exaggerating the truth to make your point. So you're having to go a step beyond it in the direction that the truth is already pointing. That's what parody does. It exaggerates it. It's hard to exaggerate something that's already a parody of itself. That's what Chesterton was getting at. And we're seeing our society, our reality, turning into a parody of itself and becoming difficult to satirize. The other problem, which is a very common problem these days, is that your jokes end up coming true, like prophecies. I don't know if you guys have seen this before, but I'm going to show you a few of these. Now, what I'm going to show you is a Babylon Bee headline followed by a real story that came along within possibly hours, sometimes days, sometimes weeks later. Let's do the first one here. This is CNN criticizes Israel Arab leaders for shaking hands in the middle of a pandemic. Now, this was on September 15th of 2020. We were thinking, how would CNN cover this monumental moment in history? What are they going to focus on? Well, they're going to focus on something that Trump did, probably violating COVID protocols. Now, let's go to the next slide where you have a real CNN headline 5 hours later. White House largely disregards coronavirus precautions during Abraham Accords signing. It's like they plagiarized our website. It's almost the same image at the same time. It's just incredible. Are they following the Babylon Bee and picking these things off? Next, real quick. Pants sales plummet as everyone working from home. The pink boxers are a nice touch. This was on March 25th of 2020. This is a joke about how everybody's, they're working on Zoom calls from home during the COVID lockdowns. And so, what do they need pants for? The camera doesn't see you from the waist down, unless you're tubing. Next one real quick. Amid coronavirus, Walmart says it's seeing increased sales of tops, but not bottoms. Now look at the date, March 26th. The last slide was March 25th. This was 1 day later. It's a silly example, but you get the point. This one's awesome. Go to the next one, please. Trump, I have done more for Christianity than Jesus. This is a Babylon Bee headline. Babylon Bee headline. We wrote this in 2019. Now, it's a play on his ego, right? It's a play on his ego. Now, this one's funny because it was actually fact-checked initially. Snopes rated this false. It went viral. Like, the left was sharing it like crazy. They wanted to believe that Trump really said this. So Snopes fact-checked it and let us all know that Trump did not actually say this. This is false. Okay, now show the next one. Trump is currently calling into Flashpoint, a prophecy-focused conservative talk show on Kenneth Copeland's Victory Channel. Nobody has done more for Christianity or for evangelicals or for religion itself than I have. That was in September of 2021. He didn't say Jesus, but anyone. That's kind of all-encompassing. So this is one of the ways that like comedy is under attack, right? I'm gonna go through like 3 of them basically. And the first one here is that the world is so absurd, it's very, very difficult to satirize. We're making the world into this crazy place. But we also have this other line of attack that's going on where they're trying to make jokes, they're trying to make rules about what you can and can't joke about. Are you guys familiar with the situation with Dave Chappelle and his Netflix special? He was accused of something you may have heard of. It's called punching down. Have you ever heard of punching down? Punching down. You are not allowed to punch down as a comedian. Punching down is when you joke about people who have less power than you, right? This is this idea that there's this hierarchical structure of classes of people. There's people at the top, there's people at the bottom, and people who are higher up on that ladder shouldn't be joking about people who are further down on that ladder. And Dave Chappelle violated that principle and was punching down. We have the situation with Facebook, where Facebook has recently published these rules where they have decided satire is going to be allowed. This was in June. They put out these new rules about satire. Satire is allowed on our platform. You can be a satirist, but you cannot punch down. Punching down is considered hate speech under the guise of satire or comedy. So they're trying to put you in a box and say what you can and can't joke about it. Now, this is really interesting for a number of reasons. Now, I reject the whole premise behind this idea of punching down. I think we're all created equal. Does anybody in here agree with me? Good. I see a few of you didn't clap. Looking at you. We're all created equal. I think we should be able to joke about each other indiscriminately if we're all created equal. And guess what? You are only reinforcing these ideas that there are people. Imagine thinking to yourself, just imagine for a second, thinking to yourself, you know what? I can't joke about those people. They're beneath me. How condescending a thought is that? I can't joke about those people. They're beneath me. That's what they want you to think about when you're writing a joke. Not is it funny, but am I joking about people who are beneath me? Why would I think about, they say that if I make a joke about women, I'm punching down. Are women beneath me? I don't think so. But that's the idea there, is that you are in this structure and you have to abide by these rules. And it's really speech suppression is what they're trying to do, is they're trying to protect their own groups, their own ideas. We are in a battle of ideas here, and instead of fighting fair, they're creating this structure where they're trying to put you in violation of rules that they've arbitrarily made up that are actually discriminatory and reinforce sexist ideas and racist ideas. And one more point I'll make about this. This is an important point. First of all, does it seem like Dave Chappelle is losing? I don't think he's losing. He's winning, right? They're amplifying his voice when they're trying to silence it. I want you to be very cognizant of that point. But this idea that you're punching down, I describe it this way: as conservatives doing comedy in this culture, in this day and age, we're on the ropes. We are not punching down. If anything, we're punching back. And we are, in fact, punching up. Because these progressive ideas, this ideology that we are ridiculing, that we're attacking with our jokes, with our satire, it comes from the top down. It comes from the most powerful institutions in our nation. It comes from politicians, celebrities, the media, corporations. When we push back on that stuff, we are not punching down. They're trying to make you think that you're dealing with the people who are marginalized and oppressed. But listen to this. If you have the will and the power to punish anybody who makes fun of you or criticizes you, you are not marginalized. You are not oppressed. You're the oppressor in that situation. So it's really, the shoe is on the other foot. It's the opposite of what they want to make you believe that it is. Sorry, I had to get a little serious there, but that's an important point. Back to the fun stuff. So here's the third way, okay? So you've got, they're making the world too absurd to be satirized, and they're making all these rules about what you can and can't joke about, you're not allowed to punch down, and they're also giving jokes a truth rating, and they're rating them false. Instead of saying that jokes are either funny or not, it used to be that way, you used to either laugh or you didn't. Now, jokes have a truth rating. They can be false, dangerous misinformation. I'm gonna show you some examples of the jokes that we have had fact-checked. The most notable of which, this was back in 2018, Snopes fact-checked this article, and Facebook threatened to kick us off because of it. You can go to the next one, we'll show this one. CNN purchases industrial-sized washing machine to spin the news before publication. It's not possible to do that, by the way. But we have to be sure. We have to check with Snopes. Snopes will tell you that they only fact-check stories that people have reported to them and said, is this true? Should I believe this? Snopes, will you please answer this for me? Tell me if this is true. I don't believe that for a second about this one. Let's do the next slide, another CNN hit piece. CNN praises Taliban for wearing masks during attack. Those are some nice cloth masks they got there. Responsibly wearing masks. This got shared like crazy. People thought this was true. Now here's another important point. If somebody believes that this is true, who is that indictment of? The satirist who wrote it or CNN? CNN, right? They try to say that our jokes are too close to reality. Reality is too close to satire. These people are easy to mock. And these jokes, when you make them, it's because it's so believable. The joke about Trump, for example, that I've done more for Christianity than Jesus. Trump has a very outlandish personality. He says big, crazy things like that. So it was believable because of his personality. This is believable because of CNN's track record. Next. Ocasio-Cortez appears on The Price is Right and guesses everything is free. This one got Snoped too. By the way, they've changed the way they do this. It used to be, when this was originally written, 2019, it says up there, very faded, Snopes was rating these false. So they started rating them as satire. They put a satire rating on it. They're only doing that because we had to have a legal battle with them. Before that, they were rating this false as if we had made a claim. But this is a photoshopped image. She was not actually on The Price is Right. But if she was, she might guess that everything was free. We did just hear from Kamala Harris that this new Build Back Better package is going to be free for taxpayers. Next, please. Ninth Circuit Court overturns the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This one, people ask me what my favorite Babylon Bee headline is. I don't know that this is my favorite. I don't think it's the funniest headline we've ever written, but it's one of my favorites for the specific reason that this got fact-checked. National Review wrote a story on this and said it was the stupidest fact-check that's ever been done in the history of fact-checking. USA Today wrote a fact-check of this piece and cited 15 sources in their lengthy refutation of this joke. 15 sources. They made phone calls. They checked the Ninth Circuit Court's website. What does it mean to overturn somebody's death? Is that a resurrection? It's not possible. It's like the washing machine thing. It's not a thing. Why are they fact-checking this stuff? Well, it's interesting. If you scroll to the bottom of that fact-check, it said it was paid for in part by grants from Facebook. So Facebook pays USA Today to fact-check stories like this, and then they come back to us and say, hey, our third-party fact-checkers say you're spreading fake news on our platform. You need to knock it off or we're going to kick you off. So it's like this rigged circular system. It's really interesting. You can go to the next one. So what do we take away from this, these attacks on comedy and satire, these very creative and conniving ways of canceling comedy? A couple of things. I'd say the main points that you want to walk away with from these types of attacks is that it means you're over the target, honestly. If they're coming after you, it means you're being effective. And I have people ask me all the time. I love when you clap. I get a water break. I don't need that much. If the New York Times was writing positive pieces about us, that would concern me. The fact that they're attacking us means we're doing something right. The New York Times calls us a far-right misinformation site that sometimes traffics in misinformation under the guise of satire. We traffic in misinformation under the guise of satire. And the reason they're saying that, they know better than the New York Times. They can go to our website. They can see that we're a satire site. They can see that our tagline is fake news you can trust and that we've always been doing legitimate satire. They're attacking us. They are using misinformation to smear us as being a source of misinformation. It's always projection. It's always projection. They are always doing what they're accusing you of doing. So never feel like you have to apologize or back down. And definitely never censor yourself. This is the other thing. You know, people feel a lot of pressure. I got a question just yesterday. I did like an Ask Me Anything on Instagram, and somebody asked me, they said, I want to get politically involved on my campus, but I'm afraid that I'm going to get censored. Dare them to censor you. Make them do it. Don't censor yourself. You're doing the tyrant's work for him. And I said a moment ago, is Dave Chappelle winning or losing? He's winning. He's winning. We talk about him more, people are watching his show more because there's been an effort to suppress his voice. When you try to stamp something out, you draw attention to it. It's called the Streisand effect. Look it up. There were some aerial photos taken of her home that had been viewed like 6 times. She didn't like that. She wanted her privacy, so she sued the guy that took those pictures, and now they've been viewed millions of times because the lawsuit attracted media attention. When you try to suppress something, you draw attention to it. So let them try to shut you down. Let them try to shut you up. Never censor yourself. I would also say that we need to try to stay on these platforms. People ask me all the time, why don't you leave Facebook? If Facebook hates you so much, why don't you leave? Go somewhere else. Create your own. Start your own. Well, you saw what happened with Parler. And do you remember Google+? Does anybody remember Google+? Are you guys all too young to remember that? Google tried to start a social network and it failed. Google, with all of its resources and money, you know, everything is designed around Facebook on the internet. Publishers have to create their articles in a certain way. They have to format them in a certain way that's friendly to Facebook. The whole internet's built around Facebook. It's not that easy to start competition for Facebook. Those things, those competitors aren't real alternatives. They end up being ideological echo chambers where there's not really a diverse public discourse happening there. We have a right to be on these platforms. They are the modern public square. You'll hear a lot. No, they're not. They're private companies. They can do whatever they want. It's not really true. There's a sense in which it's true because they are private companies. But they're private companies in a very, very unique position, an unprecedented position. This is where public discourse happens now. This is where information flows. This is where news is received. This is where government officials talk to the public. The Supreme Court itself has referred to it as the modern digital public square in some of their cases and decisions. I know Justice Thomas has weighed in on this and thinks that they should be, you know, treated as common carriers. But they really are the public square, even though they're private companies. And what that means is that you have a right to be on that platform. They hold themselves out as platforms for free expression. Now, the law hasn't caught up to this yet. But what there is currently on the books right now is this whole thing, Section 230. I don't know if you guys have heard of Section 230. But Section 230 gives these platforms immunity from liability for engaging in content moderation on their platforms. They can take down content they don't like. But they're supposed to do that in good faith. The best way that I can explain this situation is it's like it's a legal benefit with qualifying conditions, okay? It's not like a regulatory scheme or anything like that. And so, like, when you think of a tax-exempt status for a nonprofit, they have to qualify for that. If they engage in political activism, they lose their tax-exempt status. If these platforms are engaging in politically motivated viewpoint discrimination, they disqualify themselves for the immunity they should enjoy under 230. So the answer is for them to simply stop doing that, and someone needs to hold them accountable for that. The answer is not for us to run and hide and go to our own platforms and whisper in the corner amongst ourselves. We need to be bold truth tellers who aren't afraid to speak out on these platforms and assert our right to be on these platforms. But, you know, thank you. That was brilliant. It was brilliant. I just make jokes on the internet, so I don't know why you guys are listening to me. Let me just close by saying real quick that our mission statement, if we have one, we don't formally have one, but if I could summarize what our mission is, doing this satire, making these jokes, it's not just to make people laugh. It's to make them think as well. It's to ridicule bad ideas. That's as succinctly as I can put it. Ridicule bad ideas before they can take root in people's minds and hearts and do damage in our society. There are a lot of bad ideas out there, and they're hard to satirize because they're so crazy and absurd when they're put into practice. But it's important to ridicule them before they can take root in people's minds and hearts, and I think satire does that extremely effectively. To quote G.K. Chesterton again, he said, "Humor can get in under the door while seriousness is still fumbling at the handle." And I think that's why it's so necessary to engage in not just rational argumentation. You know, you can argue with your friends until you're blue in the face and try to convince them of why they're wrong. Mock bad ideas, ridicule bad ideas. There's a moral good to that because you're actually going to help people. You're going to save people. It's a way of loving people, if we're being honest. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you.